How can I tell if what I'm feeling is nerves in the moment versus a deeper belief about myself? This is another really good question. I'll say it like this. Nerves are typically situational, right? So then the question is, are the things that you're experiencing, the things you're feeling, do they repeat? Is it a recurring thing? Does it happen every time you do one particular activity? Or is it independent of any one particular activity, right? Does the same feeling or thought pattern arise in multiple different scenarios? If the answer is yes there, it's likely a limiting belief, right? And that's where we have to get into this conversation about limiting beliefs. And so, there, I know I'm looking at the list of questions. I know that's a follow-up. So we'll get into that deeper in a minute. Look, thoughts become beliefs. So the more we repeat a thought pattern, the more you repeat a thought pattern, an internal narrative, a dialogue, the more it becomes a belief. So be very, very vigilant over and very careful with your thoughts. If you continually tell yourself, I suck at XYZ, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so that's also where language is critical. When we say, this is a flaw of mine, right? This actually came up in a coaching call earlier today. A client says, that is a flaw of mine, right? And so I immediately correct him and I say, if we use developmental language, we would say that is something that I have struggled with in the past, right? And it sounds like semantics, but it's the difference in saying I am a fuck up versus I fucked up, right? We all make mistakes. It doesn't mean we are a mistake, right? And this kind of ties into the previous question of identity, right? We are not the mistakes that we make, right? And so if we have a flaw or something that we might label as a flaw, rather than assign ourselves that flaw, when we say this is my flaw, we're arguing to hold on to it, right? We're attaching it to us forever. But if we change that language and we say, this is something I have struggled with in the past, that simple change in language allows us the opportunity to have a different future. I can engage with that thing differently in the future. Like I've created that internal dialogue. I'm telling myself that there's a possibility that it changes in the future. And so now it's no longer a limiting belief, right? Or that's how we start to break that pattern, right? And so if we go back to nerves, again, they're typically situational, right? Event specific. The feelings are temporary. They often dissipate after the situation has passed, right? The sensation, it's fight or flight, right? So, the situation can feel rapid. You get physical changes like heart rate increase, you get sweaty palms, maybe your breathing changes. In a true adrenaline dump, your eyesight changes, you get tunnel vision. That may not reflect how you generally view themselves, but rather how you perceive the present moment. And so if you're trying to identify nerves or a deeper belief about yourself, this is where I would be looking, right? Nerves only show up or often show up only in specific situations, and they're directly linked to a specific event. You have physical symptoms, fight or flight response, usually accompany nerves, right? And then once the event is over, those feelings usually wane. If it doesn't work like that, if it's recurring and repeating regardless of situation, it's probably a limiting belief. I'll give you a really good tip either way, whether it's a limiting belief or nerves. This is a great action item. And this actually is in one of our recent podcasts with TJ Dillashaw. So one way of thinking about this is you need to make your conscious voice louder than the unwanted voice, right? The nerves or the limiting belief. And so rather than, if that internal voice is saying like, oh, I'm not ready for this. Oh, I suck. Oh, I'm going to get beat, or, oh, I'm not going to make the play, right? That's the one that we want to, we're not even going to say quiet it. What we're going to do is we're going to be louder than that with the conscious voice, the one that we want to hear, right? And TJ talks about this. He says every time he had a negative thought, he would replace it immediately with 3 positive ones. wins, right? So if I have the thought of, oh, I'm not going to make this play, then I would immediately catch it, slam in, and say, no, screw that. I trained for this. I'm prepared. I know how to do this. I've got this. I've done it in the past. That's four, stacking it right on top of that one. And so you start to reverse that with conscious override. And you want that winner's voice, that conscious voice to be louder than that tape, that limiting belief dialogue, right? That's your inner critic, your limbic system, and it's hijacking your mind. So we can regain control by making that conscious voice louder. And then you can also continue to win by increasing the frequency, right? So if you have one negative thought, you have 3 or 4 positive thoughts on top of it. And then the other thing is, in those moments, make sure you're focusing on the actions that are required to deliver your desired result. And what I mean by that is, or an example is like, if I'm shooting a free throw, right? So let's say I have a free throw in front of 100,000 people to win the national championship. You know, the game's on the line, it's tie game, no time on the clock, or down by 1, and I've got 2 free throws. And if I miss them both, we lose. If I hit them both, we win. If I hit one, we go to overtime, right? A lot of guys will just say, like, all I have to do is hit one, right? And I think that's where normal people or mediocre people would even kind of falter, right? Because I know when I was in high school, I could hit 9 out of 10 free throws, right? Like I was the guy that went in and I shot the technicals because I could hit 9 out of 10 in practice. So if I can hit 9 out of 10 in practice, why then when I step to the line in the moment would I say, okay, 50% is acceptable? Like, no, it's not. I'm not going to allow that to be my standard just because of this moment, right? And so you have to forget about the moment. If you're thinking about the moment, you're not focused on the actions required to get the result, right? So I forget about the score, I forget about the crowd, I forget about the event, whatever it is, and I just go back to, I shot so many free throws. I haven't touched a basketball in 3 years, 4 years, and I can tell you, I put my right big toe, there's a nail in the middle of the free throw line. You put my right big toe, goes right on that nail. I dribble the ball 3 times. I spin it once, dribble it twice, get my fingers on the grooves right where I want them, and then I shoot the shot. That was my shot process. And I did it so many times that even though I haven't shot a free throw in 5 or 10 years, I still know what I would do. I still, like, that is wired into me because of all of the accumulation of reps. Okay. So I have to focus on the actions. Those are the actions. That's my shot process that I need to execute in order to make that shot, right? And so then when I'm shooting it, I'm looking, there's 3 hooks. No matter where you stand on the basketball rim, there's 3 hooks that face you. I pick the middle one, and you just envision the ball going right over the top of that middle one. And I actually learned that from a guy named Del Curry. You probably don't know who he is, but he has 2 really famous sons. One's name is Steph, and the other's name is Steven. Steph Curry is a pretty good shooter. And I was fortunate enough to learn how to shoot from their dad at a Roanoke College basketball camp way back years ago. So 3 hooks on a basketball hoop. You find the middle one when it's facing you. Ball goes right over the top of that middle one.